Transfers are the heartbeat of modern football. They bring hope, excitement, promises, but sometimes they also bring downfall, because one single deal can change not only the future of matches, but the destiny of entire clubs. Finances collapsing, dressing rooms breaking apart, identities disappearing. And that is what we uncover today. The transfers that didn't make clubs great, but instead dragged them into chaos. Deals that stand forever as warnings carved into football's history. But let me be clear, we are not talking about small mistakes. We are talking about the true catastrophes, the transfers that drained hundreds of millions, that poisoned squads, and that left fans betrayed and heartbroken. January 2018, Manchester United proudly announce a transfer that was supposed to change everything. Alexis Sanchez, Arsenal's superstar, arrives at Old Trafford. This was not just a signing, it was a statement. Sanchez became the highest paid player in Premier League history, earning more than £500,000 per week. The fans celebrated, the media hailed it as a coup, the expectations were sky high. But within months, the dream was gone. It wasn't triumph, it was disaster. Few goals, few assists, constant injuries, and worse still, psychologically, a dressing room divided. Because when one man earns astronomical wages and delivers almost nothing, the rest feel cheated, undervalued, betrayed. Alexis Sanchez didn't just ruin matches, he ruined the balance of Manchester United itself. The wage structure collapsed, envy spread, and the club lost its identity. The tease. But make no mistake, Sanchez was only the beginning, because he was not the only one whose name now stands as a monument of failure. We are talking about world champions bought for record sums and who collapsed. We are talking about young prodigies that led entire clubs down the wrong path. We are talking about deals that burned through fortunes and destroyed projects meant to last decades. And soon, you will see them all. Dramatic block one. One club destroyed itself with a world champion, another with a so-called wonder kid, and one club spent more than €100 million only to send the player back to their rivals, humiliated. But before we reveal them, you must understand this truth. Transfers are not only numbers, they are psychology, they are fate, they are the fragile line between glory and ruin. And in the next part, you will discover the 4 names that join Alexis Sanchez in this dark list, the transfers remembered as the greatest catastrophes of modern football. Transfers are gambles. Sometimes clubs put everything on the table and lose it all. And that is exactly what happened in 2009 when Real Madrid signed a Ballon d'Or winner whose name today is remembered more for disappointment than for glory. Summer 2009, Florentino Perez launches his second Galactico era. Cristiano Ronaldo, Karim Benzema, Xabi Alonso, 3 megastars, 3 pillars of a new empire. And in the middle of it all, Kaká, the Ballon d'Or winner of 2007, the shining star of AC Milan. Expectations? Immense. Kaká was the man who had carried Milan to Champions League glory, the player hailed as Ronaldo's perfect partner. Madrid believed they were buying certainty, elegance, and dominance. But reality told a different story. The injuries began almost immediately. Years of intensity at Milan had worn his body down. He returned in flashes, showed glimpses of brilliance, but never consistently. Soon, Mesut Ozil overtook him, later Isco, and Kaká became a shadow on the bench. From €65 million superstar to luxury substitute, psychologically, Kaká became the perfect example of the illusion of prestige. Real Madrid didn't buy the player he was, they bought the memory of who he had been. But memories do not win titles. For Madrid, it meant money wasted, opportunities lost, and a warning that even world champions collapse when time runs against them. Kaká's transfer wasn't just a sporting failure, it shook the foundation of the Galactico philosophy itself. It showed that prestige, Brand value and reputation are fragile illusions when the player cannot deliver. Madrid, thanks to their revenue machine, survived financially, but Kaká's legacy was cemented. One of the most expensive disappointments in football history. But Real Madrid were not alone. Other clubs would make the same mistakes, only with even heavier consequences. Kaká stands as a warning. A Ballon d'Or winner, bought for glory, remembered for pain. But while Real Madrid survived despite him, other clubs in Spain would soon collapse into chaos under the weight of even bigger mistakes. And next, you will discover how a Spanish giant destroyed its identity with a world champion. How another wasted a fortune on a wonder kid who never belonged. And how one record signing became the symbol of humiliation. One club paid more than 120 million euros for a superstar who crumbled in Messi's shadow. Another spent 126 million euros on a prodigy who never fit the system he was forced into. And one club destroyed itself with the most expensive signing in its history. A man who would later score against them in humiliating fashion. Sometimes a transfer is not just expensive. Sometimes it becomes a symbol of fear, chaos, and the complete loss of direction inside a football club. And that was exactly the story of Antoine Griezmann's move to FC Barcelona in 2019. 1 year earlier, he had staged his own documentary, La Decisión. In it, Griezmann announced he would stay at Atletico Madrid, a proud moment that infuriated Barcelona fans who felt mocked and rejected. But only a year later, Barcelona paid his 120 million euro release clause and finally brought him to the Camp Nou. For some it looked like triumph, for others betrayal, but for the club itself it was disaster. Griezmann was not a bad player. He was a World Cup winner, a goal scorer, a leader. But in Barcelona, he never belonged. Next to Messi, he looked invisible. As a winger, he lacked explosiveness. As a striker, he lacked dominance. He was everywhere on the pitch, and at the same time, nowhere. Psychologically, Griezmann became the victim of forced integration. He wasn't signed because he fit into the system. He was signed because Barcelona feared losing him to Real Madrid. This was not a plan. This was panic. And that panic ruined Barcelona. While Griezmann tried to find his place, the debts grew, the squad lost balance, and fans kept asking, why did we spend 120 million euros? This was a textbook case of identity loss. A club that once bought players for a clear philosophy, suddenly reacting out of fear, and in doing so, losing its soul. Yes, Griezmann scored goals. Yes, he worked hard. But he was never the difference maker that 120 million euros demanded. 2 years later, Barcelona sent him back to Atletico. Cheap, almost humiliating. And that return confirmed the transfer as pure chaos. 120 million euros spent, only to hand him back to the rival. Psychologically, this revealed the truth. When a club acts out of fear, it doesn't only lose money, it loses credibility. And that is what Barcelona sacrificed. But Griezmann was not the only one. While Barcelona ruined itself with a world champion, Atletico Madrid at the same time bet everything on a wonder kid, Joao Felix. 126 million euros, the hope of a new superstar. But the boy never fit into Simeone's system. And Barcelona themselves carried the ultimate crown of absurdity. Their most expensive signing in history. A man who would later score against them in the Champions League humiliation. Philippe Coutinho. Both Felix and Coutinho were even more destructive than Griezmann. And they are the final names on this list. Griezmann today stands as a symbol of Barcelona's downfall. A world champion signed in fear, lost inside a club that had already lost itself. But the real tragedy was still to come, because when clubs spend fortunes on players who never fit, and when the most expensive signing of all time ends up destroying the team that bought him, then we are no longer talking about mistakes, we are talking about ruin. And that final escalation is waiting in the next block. Sometimes transfers are not just mistakes, sometimes they become symbols. Symbols of excess, of illusions, and of the end of an era. And that is exactly what the final two names on our list represent. Joao Felix at Atletico Madrid and Philippe Coutinho at FC Barcelona. Atletico Madrid in 2019 stood at a crossroads. Griezmann was gone, the team needed a new face, a new hope, and so they bet everything on João Felix, 126 million euros for a 19-year-old prodigy from Benfica. The expectations were immense. Atletico wanted him to be their new Griezmann, a player of goals, creativity and magic. But very quickly it became clear, Felix did not fit. Diego Simeone's football was built on intensity, defense and discipline, but Felix thrived on freedom, creativity and expression. The clash between coach and player was not just tactical, it was psychological. Instead of becoming the new hero, Felix became a misfit, trapped between expectation and reality. This was the projection fallacy. Atletico didn't buy João Felix as he truly was. They bought the fantasy of a new Griezmann, and that fantasy collapsed. The result, 126 million euros gone, a player who never delivered what was imagined, and a transfer that became the symbol of a broken vision. Barcelona needed a saviour after Neymar left in 2017. They needed someone to fill the void, someone to carry the burden, and so they turned to Philippe Coutinho for a staggering 145 million euros. But Coutinho was never Neymar. He was not a dribbler of chaos, not a superstar playmaker. He was a different kind of player, and for that very reason, he collapsed at Barcelona. He looked shy, uncertain, almost invisible. Next to Messi and Suarez, he shrank. The fans lost patience, the media mocked him, and Coutinho became the face of wasted millions. But the greatest humiliation came in 2020, on loan at Bayern Munich. Coutinho scored twice against Barcelona in the infamous 8-2 Champions League quarter-final. The most expensive signing in Barcelona's history did not just destroy finances, he destroyed pride. Coutinho is the perfect example of destructive expectation. He was a good player, but he was forced to become something he never could be, and under that weight, he broke. These 5 transfers, Sanchez, Kaká, Griezmann, Felix, Coutinho, all deliver the same lesson. Football is not only decided on the pitch, it is decided in boardrooms, in negotiations, and in the minds of those who buy. Sanchez destroyed the balance of Manchester United's dressing room. Kaká symbolised the illusion of buying past glory. Griezmann showed what happens when fear replaces strategy. Felix was the victim of projection, bought for who he wasn't. Coutinho was crushed by impossible expectations. Clubs aren't just ruined by money lost. They are ruined by lost identity, by broken trust, by psychological collapse. Transfers are wagers on the future, but these 5 showed that sometimes they are not investments, they are tickets to ruin. And that is why we remember them not for their glory, but for their failure. Now it's your turn. Which of these transfers do you think was the greatest catastrophe? And which other deal deserves a place on this list? Drop your answer in the comments, give this video a like, and subscribe to Kicksplosion_TV. Because the greatest dramas in football do not always happen on the pitch sometimes, they happen at the negotiation table.